This is going to be what if Belle had a unique symbiote. Now, this will be an anime crossover, so you will find a character from one of my favorite TV shows, anime, in here. Belle's symbiote is going to be Rimuru Tempest, but until he unlocks Rimuru, it will be Great Sage. Okay. What if Belle Cornell had a unique symbiote? Let's start. So, we're gonna start where Belle is a kid, and his grandfather is reading him a story in the cabin. He's reading the tales of the Argonaut. As he's reading the books, Belle dozes off and falls asleep, and Zeus goes out to drink ale, and he falls asleep in a chair in front of the fire. As is, and about an hour, 3 hours passes, so 2 hours pass, and Belle hears a loud boom and wakes up. Zeus is drunk, so he doesn't hear the boom, and Belle sees that there is a meteor falling. Now the boom, let's say, was a little shard of the meteor that fell off, so that boom hit outside his house. But the meteor's gonna go farther. He sees a shooting star go, and then it turns into not a shooting star, but a meteor. It lands about a good bit into the woods, and Belle sees it, and he opens his window, jumps out, and starts running after it. As he arrives at the meteor, he sees a blue liquid, and he walks up to it, and he jumps on him. And he falls back. As he falls back, he blacks out, and he sees a little slime. The slime says, "Hello, I'm Rimuru. What's your name?" He says, "I'm Belle." And he says, "I'm Rimuru Tempest, and this is Great Sage." As a woman pops up, I'm not going to go through the whole details. And Rimuru says, "I am what you would call a slime, but I was stuck on a meteor that fell into this planet. My body mutated in space where I could survive the oxygen, and now I can only survive with a human host until I regain my strength." He says, "A human host? What does that mean?" "A partner. So I came to ask you if you'd be my partner." And Ben says, "I don't know." As Rimuru says, "Here, let me sweeten the deal. If you agree to be my partner, I will give you powers that will let you be the greatest hero you can be. There is. You could have magic, you could have the ability, super strength, you could even become let's say Rimuru Rimuru's talk, you could even become I could be like the Argonaut." And Rimuru says, "Yeah, like the Argonaut. But in return, you have to let me live inside you." And to be honest, Belle was ready to say yes as soon as he said he could be the greatest hero. So he says, "Of course." And he says, "Yeah, that's the deal." And he wakes up in his bed, because the entire time Rimuru was walking him back to his room, his house. So he wakes up in his bed the next morning and says, "So it all was a dream." And he hears Rimuru's voice and says, "Nope, it wasn't." He says, he thinks to himself, "So it wasn't a dream, Rimuru?" "No." And no, it wasn't. But you have to keep a secret, because if your grandfather knows, you might try to hurt me. Belle doesn't tell her grandfather, and for the next year, until grandfather died, everything goes the same, except Belle's more determined to train. So, yeah. When his grandfather dies, Rimuru says, "Don't worry, you still have me." They've become really good friends, and they say, "Let's go. We are Tempest." Because that's what they say, we are Tempest. as he transforms into this form. Let's say Rimuru can, with his transform skill, can turn into any form. But he doesn't have a symbiote form, so this is his main. It's called Tempest. We are Tempest armor. This is the Tempest armor. There is no sword, it's just the armor. But he is actually no, let's say there is a sword, but it's a katana with lightning bolts on it, like Zenitsu's sword from Demon Slayer. So they armor up and say, "We are Tempest." With slime goes around him. Slime comes out of Bell, and it goes around him, and armor forms on him. And they say, "We are Tempest," as he starts walking towards Auraria. They come out of symbiote form and start looking for Familia. Rimuru tells Bell that he shouldn't be in the symbiote form till we get into a Familia. Bell trusts Rimuru enough to listen to him, and then he gets into Hestia Familia. He tells Hestia that he has a unique ability. It's like a summon. She says, "What do you mean summon? Can you show me?" He says, "Sure." As he says, "We are Tempest." And the armor comes around him. Rimuru walks over to him, because let's say Rimuru has control on Tempest armor. But he can let Bell have control when Bell wants it. But he's trying to introduce Rimuru. So the animal walks off with Bell and he says, "Hello, we are Tempest. I am Tempest." Because he doesn't introduce himself to Rimuru as Rimuru unless it's a personal person with someone. So he says, "Hello, I am Tempest." As he says, "So you're his son?" Yeah, he can summon me out of it. He can summon me out to fight for him, or we can fight together. As they fuse back together, and then sword appears out of the room. Let's say he can use lightning moves mainly, because he mainly uses lightning type moves. So they learn that. Yeah. You know what? I'm gonna change it a little bit. Instead of Hestia, let's say Hestia was one of the bigger familias, and instead of Hestia finding Bell, it was a girl named Poseidon. Yeah, because Poseidon's my favorite god in Greek mythology. So yeah, it's not Hestia anymore, it's Poseidon. And Poseidon's always had her gold trident. She's a very proud goddess. So Poseidon says to Bell, "That's awesome. Where'd you get such good abilities?" "Well, I had them ever since I was a kid." And let's say Poseidon doesn't have any fun in her familia because ever since Zeus died, she's been a mess. Yeah. So the next day, Bell goes into the dungeon. Bell goes into the dungeon on the 3rd floor and is fighting monsters with his sword. Rimuru says "Predator" as he eats the sword, as he eats one of every monster on the level, and Rimuru gains all the abilities, and so does Bell. Rimuru tells Bell that when he says "Black Lightning" and points his hand out, he'll shoot out an arc of black lightning. He can also use it to enhance his speed. As he does this, he says, "Black lightning 100% that, 100% speed boost." When he says "Black lightning 100%, it pretty much just boosts all of his stats, so it's like one for all. So he says "Black lightning 15%, and he's a shit ton faster. He starts cutting through monsters faster. As he realizes he hasn't been picking up the stones, he picks up about a quarter of the stones he's been killing. He just keeps going. He brings back the giant sack of monster cores and says, "Here you go, Miss Anna." Miss Anna's baffled by this and says, "What level did you go to?" He says, 3. She's saying, "That's the one I cleared you for, but how'd you get so many monster cores?" "I never stopped." she realizes that quickly that this kid is strong, and he can become one of the strongest adventurers she's ever seen. She's advised. As this happens, Belle says, "Don't worry, Miss Anna, but do you mind if I go down to floor 6 tomorrow?" She says, "Yeah, considering how many monsters you were able to kill on 3, I think that shouldn't be a problem." And the next day, he goes down to level 6, and brings back twice as many magic cores. Miss Anna says, "How are you this good?" He just says, "More monsters spawned on that floor than 3. So let's say that Belle's got enough money to be... Belle has currently $120,000. He buys Poseidon a house in the city, and he sleeps on the couch. Poseidon treasures Belle and has a thing for him, like Hestia does. But it's more of a, I'll kiss you on the cheek every once in a while and not get in my bed. Get in my bed, boy. Like Hestia has. Poseidon not very forceful, she's pretty blunt. So she won't, be like, "Why is he going out with that other girl?" Like he does with eyes. So the next day, Belle's walking on level 3, killing every monster he comes across. And a minotaur pops up. He says, "I don't know if I'm quite ready for this," but anyway, he draws his sword as he cuts off the minotaur's arm. And then Eyes comes in and finishes off. Let's say Eyes was there and watched him cut off and then watched him shoot before he could... No, let's do this. Eyes is running along a dungeon looking for the minotaur. As she's about to walk onto the walkway, she sees a giant beam of black lightning shoot down the hallway. And it came from this man. She walks up to him and says, "You could have killed someone with that." He says, "There was a minotaur on this level, so I had to deal with it." She says, "You just killed a minotaur with that? How strong was it?" "Well, if I probably pointed at the wall, I'd probably be able to break it." And she thinks and says, that wall is about 50 yards thick stone into another dungeon. He says, "I could probably tunnel." I'm sorry, I'm stuttering a lot. He says, "I can probably tunnel through to the next side if I just shoot it." She thinks, he can do that? How strong is this mage? She looks down and sees a sword on his belt and says, "Was that just one of his skills?" He walks off and says, "Well, I hope we meet again." Ice now has a thing for him, but the reason Belle gets Realis phrase is because he wants to get stronger to avenge his grandpa. Let's also say that Rimuru left a bit of himself with Zeus, so who knows what killed Zeus. I don't know what killed Zeus, but let's say it's a great thunder dragon at level 1000. Yeah, let's go with that. So, yeah. As he leaves the dungeon, Seer walks up to him and says, "You dropped this on your way out yesterday." He says, "Oh, thank you." As she offers to come in, she urges him to come in. He does, and he eats there for the night. That day he got $60,000 in the dungeon, so he's pretty happy with himself, and he eats too still. Till he sees Eyes walk in. Eyes looks at him and opens her open. And he's like, "Oh," and sits back down. Then Beth starts talking about how some guy shot a giant bolt of lightning and nearly hit him. And says, if I ever see that jackass, I'll beat his face in. Ice says, "He's in the restaurant right now, right?" He looks around and says, "Who is it? Who did it?" He doesn't really question Belle. As Belle walks out. Bet now has his eye on Belle, because he was one of the people in the restaurant that night. And I think I'm gonna end it right after I finish this little bit. He goes to Poseidon's house, gives her about $38,000, no, he gives her about 58,000 bells. And he keeps 1,000 and he used 1,008. Poseidon says, you know you don't have to give me all this, right? You earned it. He says, yeah, but you're my goddess, so I do what has to be done. He kisses her on the cheek, she blushes, and they go to sleep. The end. I gotta end this quick.